Eskom has been denied a formal request that its Matimba and Medupi power stations be allowed to pollute far above the legal limits. The embattled power utility has warned that the imposition of minimum emission standards earlier than expected could lead to an energy crisis that it would eventually have to see it take power plants offline. For more on this, we're joined by climate and energy campaigner Thandile Chinyavanhu and Rosa Luxemburg Foundation Southern Africa Climate Justice Program Manager Roland Ngam. Let me begin with you, Dr. Ngam, about whether this will have any immediate implications for you and I, the consumers, as well as businesses.
Well, you know that this tug of war has been going on for a while. The minister really asked Eskom to really try and clean up its coal power stations, reduce it and bring it to international standards. And Eskom has been claiming that they are too expensive. In the short term, I don't think that there's going to be any impact, but longer term, we need to be focusing a lot more on the Just Transition program that the Reuters has announced.
And Thandile, let me come to you. Eskom goes on to say in a note that was apparently circulated in writing, well, obviously it's a note, so it wasn't writing, it says that this will have a significant impact on the economy and employment. So is this really a case of economy versus environment?
It's clearly a matter of the cost benefits to them. We did release a report in 2019 measuring the cost benefit analysis, and it's quite clear to us that Eskom prioritizes its profits above the lives of Black South Africans, who are the ones that are largely impacted by the air quality in these areas.
And if they lose more than a third of generation capacity, as they say they could do as a result of this refusal to allow Eskom to pollute more, is load shedding then more load shedding inevitable, Dr. Ngam?
Well, I think in terms of economic impact, yes, Eskom is right that whenever we have load shedding to the order of about 1,000 gigawatt hours of electricity per annum, we lose about 0.5% of GDP. But we also need to remember that we have been significantly scaling up our green energy sources. Eskom really what it is trying to do is drag its feet on transformation. And this is really going to impact the country in the long run, because right now we have about 140 billion rand that has already been offered to Eskom to green its energy sources. And a lot more of this is going to be offered to Eskom if it manages this process really well. Now, you have to remember that longer term, it is mostly green finance that is going to be available to Eskom. And so if they drag their feet now, where are they going to get the money to transform? This is really the key question that all stakeholders need to be asking themselves.
And it says, Eskom, Dr. Ngam, just to say with you that they would need about, this in some of the reporting, about 300 billion rand to meet these pollution requirements. Where would that money even come from at this stage?
And so again, these are the kind of false solutions that we get trapped in. Why do we really need to be looking at improving the coal capacity? Because what they call clean coal really is not necessarily clean. We really need to be looking at what is on the table by Germany, France, the USA, right at the top level with Joe Biden offering money to South Africa, and really focus on solar, wind, and so on. The green hydrogen projects that have been put on the table for the rest of the world to finance. And if we can do that in the really short term, there is investment available, and we should really be stop trying to clean the coal power stations and really build new ones.
Okay, I want to come back to you, Thandile, about the environmental impact for the benefit of those of us who have not been following these conversations perhaps as closely as you have, because Eskom wanted to emit around 4,000 milligrams of sulfur dioxide. That's per normal cubic meter at Medupi. That's until 2030. It already has temporary space to emit about 3,500. Just how damaging is that to the environment?
That is significantly above what is deemed adequate by the World Health Organization. In fact, they did update those standards in September this year. So we're operating with relatively weak minimum emission standards compared to the rest of the world. And Eskom is submitting significantly more than what is deemed, there is no safe air pollution level. Even the smallest amounts do have detrimental impacts on health. But Eskom is operating above what any other country is at this stage. Air quality has been linked to a number of health impacts, which Eskom continues to minimize and pretend that they don't actually have the impact that it has on the public at large. And we're seeing this in the form of cardiovascular disease, stroke, respiratory diseases, especially in the coal belt area, the high belt area. You'll see many children are afflicted by asthma, bronchitis, and most recently, poor air quality has been linked to eyesight deterioration as well as mental health deterioration. So the impacts of this are massive and they spread across health. The CSIR Center of Science Institute and Research released a report earlier this year that showed that air quality in South Africa has actually caused close to 5,000 deaths annually, and this is a massive amount. There has been a number of research put out over the years, specifically looking at Eskom, which is responsible for about 333 deaths a year, but this number could have significantly increased since that report was released. So the impacts are massive, and Eskom continues to increase its emissions despite the being cautioned not to do so, despite minimum emission standards, or at least the guidelines for air quality being strengthened across the world. However, South Africa has not caught up with these developments.
Very briefly, please, Thandile, in some reporting that's been done by MoneyWeb today, they say that the country's national air quality officer, that's Tuli Kumalo, has said that part of the reason why Eskom has been denied this approval to emit up to 4,000 milligrams of sulfur dioxide is that it really it made little effort to comply, shall we say, with the standards. Is that something that has been an ongoing situation where it just makes no effort or very little effort to comply with environmental standards?
Definitely. At this point, it's going from pillar to post and just applying for postponement after postponement. It is quite clear that Eskom, and in fact, none of the carbon majors that have emissions have an intention of actually retrofitting their plants or even decommissioning these plants that are responsible for the poor air quality in those areas. These communities are just not a priority for them, and the cost just does not weigh out for them. So I think it's quite clear that the lives of these South Africans are not a priority to these carbon majors, especially Eskom and Sasol. And it's quite important that South Africans realize this and rally against this. I ask South Africans, what is your life worth? What are the lives of your family worth? And pose that question to Eskom. Do they care to actually make these changes and decommission these plants if it means sparing the lives of your family? And we'll likely find that the answer is no.
All right, let's leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. That was Climate and Energy Campaigner Thandile Chinyavanhu and Program Manager for Climate Justice and Socio-Ecological Transformation at the Rosa Luxemburg Foundation, Southern Africa, Roland Ngam, speaking to us then about these latest developments to do with Eskom.